Hello, my name is Mark Holbert and I'm a catastrophist. Together with my colleague Cola here, we're going to present Public Service Announcement number 3, Another Approaching Catastrophe, Water Woes. This is about saltwater, part 2. Part 1 is about freshwater and primarily about aquifers and the problems they present. So we'll go through the various slides here that will be available, of course, on the website and on the YouTube channel. I'm going to include a hashtag search, Hoberti. You can also find my site by going to essentialconceptsinc.com. These are the references. They're displayed here, including especially the National Geographic's Rising Seas, how they are changing our coastlines, and special mention for the ostrich paradox, why we underprepare for disasters. I also have not included here the references to freeloaders and how to beat them, because societies will choose to succeed or fail. Jared Diamond, in his book Collapse, those are also background for this video. The essential concepts we're going to look at are identify strategic assets, identify systemic vulnerabilities, think back for natural history, think of the worst case scenario, and develop policies with built-in resilience and sustainability. The strategic asset, of course, that I'm going to talk about here are water levels, also known as sea levels. We'll start by identifying a potential catastrophe, and that is it must be renewable, sustainable, and resilient, whatever policies we adopt. Strategic assets must be regulated and access limited and rationed. Rivers, aquifers, even oceans are strategic assets, not free public goods. Another aspect of wells are the hidden costs of pumping water from near our coastlines. Americans incorrectly assume water is free and plentiful. It is not. It is going to become an increasing, emerging problem. This is from part 1, which was about aquifers, and it's about how pumping fresh water on coastal cities are leading to a worldwide problem. The sinking cities, they're racing towards sea level, present sea levels, and I highlighted articles from New Orleans, Miami Beach, Houston, Texas, New York, and Washington, D.C. You know, think tidal basin for Washington, D.C. being near sea level. And then there's some responses to it. Some cities are putting water back into their aquifers to stabilize land subsidence. There's no clear recognition among policymakers that freshwater needs are not the whole problem. To form public policies, we cannot look at only part of the problem, which is freshwater. We also need to examine saltwater. So, another potential catastrophe is sea levels. 50% of America resides within 50 miles of the Atlantic Gulf or Pacific coastlines. Big cities within a few feet of sea level are Boston, New York, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Washington, most of Florida, New Orleans, Houston, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Oakland, Portland, Seattle, and Honolulu. You decide. I think sea levels are a strategic asset. Our coastlines are a strategic asset. The assumption we're operating under is that sea levels are constant. The catastrophic assumption is that based on nature and natural history, we have to assume the worst case scenario that sea levels are not constant. It's not an assumption, it's a fact. During the greenhouse and dinosaur eons, there was no ice and the oceans were hot. Even Antarctica had lush vegetation. Sea levels were much higher than today. During the ice ages, ice sheets over North America and Europe captured vast volumes of fresh water, dropping sea levels. And indeed, based on archaeological evidence, when there's no ice on Earth, the seas are 660 feet higher, 200 meters higher. Today, the modern sea levels, we'll set that as the baseline. But during the ice ages, during the caveman days, when the glaciers were at their maximum, the sea level was 410 feet lower, 125 meters lower. Hot or cold, life has proven it can adapt. There were plenty of life on Earth during the hot periods. There's plenty of life during the cold periods. It's civilization that's at risk here. For 6,000 years, that is most of current civilization, sea levels have remained constant. We as a species have not been tested except for black swan events like Atlantis, Noah's flood, and tsunamis, and I'll talk about catastrophic history in another video. There are plenty of natural threats affecting land to subside. You can research Alexandria, Egypt, Pavlopatra, Greece, Port Royal, Jamaica, and Dunwich, England. We've got plenty of threats out there. The ice cap of Greenland is melting, and if it all melts, it'll increase sea levels by 7 meters, 21 feet. Thwaites Glacier of Antarctica is breaking apart. All of Antarctica melts, it'll be 65 meters of sea level rise. And then as the temperature of the Earth warms up, the water's warm. And that can be up to 120 meters. That's where you get the 200 meters that occurred during the dinosaur eras. We have dumb, dumber, and dumbest politicians leading our world. Coastal cities pumping fresh water from coastal aquifers for cheap freshwater drinking water. It's dumb because demand exceeds natural replenishing rates. It's dumber because seawater and salt water is being drawn into the land aquifers, contaminating the supply. And the dumbest is that the land subsidence lowers cities closer to sea level. It's becoming a race to the bottom. There's plenty of examples in human history of the exhaustion of resources. The Sumerian agriculture, irrigation was one of the first. The Mayan culture had a similar problem. Easter Island cut down the last tree, and then American settlement and expansion, and we have all sorts of examples where we went out and hunted passenger pigeons, then beavers, then bison, and then wolves. And by bringing them back, except passenger pigeons, which are now extinct, but by bringing them back, we found that beavers have a positive impact on habitats. They increase wetlands. The bison, of course, what a magnificent creature. And the wolves, they brought them back to Yellowstone, and it made the elk herds stronger and healthier because the wolves would pick out the weak ones. To find the source of the problem, just look in the mirror and you'll see all of our problems are a threat to civilization itself. And I have included some collapse by Jared Diamond, Cultures and Disasters, Lessons of Disaster, Policy Change After Catastrophic Events by Thomas Birkeland in 2007. And then finally, I want to point out the ostrich paradox, why we underprepare for disasters, 2017. And it goes through some of the cognitive biases we all face. There they are. We are short-sighted. We forget the past. We are optimistic. There's inertia to change. Simplify things, and then we have a herding bias too. Well, we're all doing it, so we'll all live or die together. Unfortunately, we're all going to die. But it gets worse. Take water, for example, pun intended. The false assumption there's plenty for taking. We assume water is cheap and plentiful. We become what economists call free riders or freeloaders. And this is the history of the village commons. We can look back and see it used to be that the villagers would have a commons in the middle of the village, and that's where they'd bring their herds in at night, keep them safe from Indians and predators. And so people would bring their herds in and let them graze on the commons to the point where the commons were denuded of grass because everybody's taking advantage of the fact that it was free there. And that's the problem of freeloaders. Things that are free will be exhausted by depletion and overuse. Drilling a well does not give you a right to water. It is not a property right, and people will resent or resist efforts to control drilling of the aquifers for what they perceive as being free, or coastal communities will resent having to draw on water from higher sources. People think of their property rights to water like Southerners before 1865 used to think of their rights to enslave others. Diversity in policy responses. Ban drilling if aquifer depletion is identified until such time as the aquifer is restored. Emphasize harvesting atmospheric water. Talk about this in another video too, that you take those turbines out there and you pump humid air deep underground into condensation chambers where it creates fresh water. Wind turbines can pump humidity deep underground where colder temperatures will cause it to condense. We should be collecting and retaining rainwater. We should terminate coastal flood insurance because, well, this country cannot finance the coastal areas when they get underwater. And then finally, desalination facilities should be made portable or movable so that as sea level rises, we can ship them higher and higher ground and continue to use them. Catastrophic thinking will improve policy formation in America. Essential Concepts videos will allow newer approaches to policies that will enable America to survive catastrophes. And then the key slide, of course, is the fact that we need to be aware that sea levels can go much higher with no ice, or go much lower if we have another ice age. We have the problem of the freeloaders. We have all these biases, and we need to adopt a bunch of responses to maintain and provide for fresh water in the future. Please support my efforts to become essential. You can go to the website essentialconceptsinc.com. Be sure to give credit. There's my copyright and trademark. And I'll end every video by a prayer for peace. Thank you.